My name's Bobby Singh. I'm here tonight with Donnelly, Craig Kirkham from the Talk Ourselves Well. We're at Sunbird Records. It is Wednesday the
24th
of August. We're here to discuss the history of Talk Ourselves Well ahead of two events, one being this Saturday the 27th of August and then the following week on Saturday the
3rd of September.
3rd of September as well. So there's two events that are going on in our hometown of Darwen. So, Si, do you want to talk a little bit around how this came to be, right from the onset of?
Talk Ourselves Well came about due to suicides within the town. So there were two suicides in quite close succession. So there was my friend Ryan, who unfortunately took his life, and then there was also Johnny Stones, who took his life as well. And it was after Johnny's death that I thought, I've got to do something. So I've worked in the community for 20 odd years, and I kind of understand how communities work and run. So I just thought it's an opportunity to implement, you know, all that experience and also lived experience into trying to unite and get men talking. Well, not even just men, but predominantly men, but anybody to just open up and talk about any mental health or life experience issues that they might be experiencing or challenges. And yeah, that's kind of how it came about. It started with a Facebook post on my personal page, and it was kind of like around a toxic masculinity and how we still walk around beating the chest. And, you know, you go back to that beginning of mankind as opposed to now, and everything else has advanced. So like technology's advanced. The world has advanced massively, especially in the last kind of like 30 years since the internet came along. And I've lost my train of thought.
But the mentality and still the same.
Yeah. So yes, the mentality from early mankind to now, you know, the emotional intelligence hasn't kind of progressed that much. We're becoming more aware, but, you know, there's been kind of like, the process has been millions of years long. And emotionally, people still have a lot of anxieties, you know, which is born from fight, flight, or freeze. And it's kind of like Talk Ourselves was created as a vessel to get people to open up. And how I kind of worked with that was to I started out walking with my phone and just recording very short videos about my own challenges and experiences, and also about, you know, where I've previously been in my life, you know, with addiction and crime and homelessness and, you know, kind of like living on your wits really. And using all that experience to try and engage people. And, you know, I think so far it's been quite successful.
So prior to them very sad events and tragedies with the suicides as well, do you want to say a little bit around where you've come from and your history?
Yeah, so I'm a Darwen lad, born and bred, born at Bull Hill Hospital back in the day. And then, yeah, so my experience, how kind of things like life, 0 to 7 formative years, all went kind of swimmingly well. And then when I was 7 years old, I was molested in a public toilet by an unknown male. And that's, when I look back through my history, that's when my own personal journey with mental health or mental ill health or unwellness started. School was quite difficult for me. I really struggled to engage. You know, my brain was like, just dark side from a very young age. From that experience, it left like a real mark on me. And then managed to get through school, started messing around with drugs like smoking weed and stuff. And then left school, started going to parties and going to different nightclubs and, you know, the acid house scene and being involved with all that. And then it came it came around, so everybody was doing pills, and then we started like ecstasy, and then we started smoking pills towards the end of the night, up on Suff Road at the flat, across from Crown. And then that kind of led quite easily into heroin use. And then once I discovered heroin, that was a drug for me. It completely anaesthetised my feelings, my emotions. It just took me out of the darkness and put me in a light place, but then a very dark place, you know, as the use kind of increased, you know, it got pretty, well, it gets dark. It does get dark.
So what was a pivotal thing that happened which made you stop, evaluate your life, change? What was that?
The pivotal point was my then partner getting pregnant with my first son. I'd moved to Blackburn because Darwen weren't a safe place for me to be anymore. Ended up homeless, so I ended up using night safe, living in hostels, and kind of moved around from Aki, Aussie, Blackburn, kind of like on a loop through all these various different like homeless projects. And yeah, the catalyst was my son being born. I had a court case hanging over my head, which I could have got jail time for. And I know myself, and I know that if I were cooped up for like 23 hours a day, I'd either just go insane. It wouldn't be a good process. So I'd kind of thought, right, I need to get out of going to jail. And then obviously the news that my partner was pregnant. So it was a case of, right, I'll get myself into a rehab. So this was Thomas in Blackburn before it is, you know, the kind of like facility that they use now. Stayed in there, went to court, then got the judge gave me a rehabilitation order for Pierpoint in St Anne's. And I did quite a few months in there before being asked to leave. So my son had been born while I was in Pierpoint. And I just thought, I need to get out of here. I can't handle, you know, my son's at home. I should be at home. I thought I'd done enough in treatment to give me like a backbone of a process to, you know, go out into the outside world. But then you kind of forget how close-knit and how insular rehabs can be. And it doesn't really prepare you for it didn't really prepare me for the outside world, simply because I was still very, very young and still very immature in my thinking and my processes. And I knew that I wanted to leave rehab. And rather than just having the balls and going up to, you know, Steve, the counsellor, and saying, you know, I'm kind of like, I'm done here, I'm just going to go. I came home on an home leave, went to Blackburn train station, got on the train, waited till my then partner left the train station, jumped off, went and scored some crack, started smoking it on train on way over, ended up smoking it in the rehab, and then subsequently was asked to leave the day after. And I remember coming and knocking on your door, and you opening the door and saying, "Come in, lad, I've already heard." You know, and you put me up for that night and then took me to a meeting, like made sure I got back to Blackburn without any detours to go and score. You know, and like I've said to you before, you know, I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity because it could have gone either way.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Yeah, it's something that like it's very close to my heart, that, you know. And then did all right, you know, going to meetings like NA meetings, quite a lot of blagging and lying to myself, thinking I were doing a lot better than I were, like white knuckling it to death. Then my uncle got cancer, And I just used it really as an excuse to start using again. Then found out, you know, that he'd passed. So I went down, and I'd already scored before I went down, and, you know, it caused a lot of upset really with the family. And then I was asked to leave my partner's house that night. And I remember a phone call that I received from my Uncle Bob. And he said to me, he said, listen, you think you're a tough guy, go and spend night up at Darwen Tower. He said, you know, he said, you can't be in that house with that child. He said, you're kind of like, you're a menace to yourself. You need to leave. And my dad had come up and turned up. And I moved into Kip, which was then the model lodging house, and it is now the studio school. And then it were pretty grim in there. I would describe it were a human zoo. It really was. Everybody using, everybody drinking, everybody, you know, compounding each other's mental health challenges and experiences. And it was a really dark place. And then, so that was just before, that was in October. And then I got to Millennium New Year's Eve. And yeah, it was pretty difficult because my dad had turned up and he just said to me, he said, it's this simple. He said, we're going out, you know, we've been invited to these parties, do yourself a favour, don't show up at any of them because nobody's going to answer the door to you. We don't want anything to do with you. And he basically said, he said, you've got a choice. He said, you've got a choice between carrying on like you are. He said, where we'll just cut you off. He said, but if you want the love of your family, he said, you really need to kind of look at yourself and get your act together. And that kind of like really resonated. It's dawn of a new millennium. So we stood on a fire escape and I'm listening to everybody partying and fireworks going off. And, you know, there were like ridiculous prices because it was New Year's Eve on Millennium. And I think it was like 50 quid to get it Roxy, something like that. And I could hear all this going on. And I'm still on this fire escape and I'm looking at top 3 stories up. And I'm just thinking, if I penguin dive off there so I don't put my arms out in front of me and I just dive off, I'm going to snap my neck and I'll kill myself. And I survived that night. And then it was the 4th of January. I rang a guy called Steve who I knew. We were working at Thomas in Blackburn. And Thomas, in that 2-year period, had progressed quite significantly. And I rang Steve and I said to him, you know, you need to get me in, mate. I said, because I'm on death's door and I'm going to kill myself if I don't get in. And he was like, listen, you've already been here once. He said, you've been Peter Point. He said, what makes it different? And I just said to him, I said, get me in or else I'm going to kill myself. And obviously it's a priest who runs that place, you know, and some negotiations and top and bottom of it were that me and Steve had gone through rehab at the same time, but in different rehabs. But we met at NA meetings and we just clicked. And he kind of fought my corner, really. And then I got a phone call saying, we can admit you, but it's going to be 7th of February. Can you hang fire till then? And I was like, yeah. You know, if I know it's happening, I'm ready. And I walked in there 1:10, 7th of February. And I remember, you know, Father Jimmy runs Thomas opening the door. And he just said to me, oh my God, you look like you're about to die. And I said to him, it's good to see you as well, Jim. And I went in and I've not touched heroin since. That's 22 years ago.
Well done.
Yeah, thanks.
So what happened in between then and you starting to go live on social media? Because from what I've gathered, you did it on your own, didn't you? It was a case of just. So what happened in between then?
So I left rehab. So at that time, it didn't work to 12 steps. It kind of like worked with a model of NLP, so like neuro-linguistic programming. And it were just a case of right time, right space and right place. And the way I describe it is like, it's like taking an old mixtape out of your cassette deck, ripping out spool out, put in a new one in, put the pencil in, and then just kind of like reprogramming it, or kind of like reprogramming the hard drive of the mind. And it was perfect because off the back of that, I've always been into reading and I've always been into like writing bits. And when I came to the end of the time there, Jim said to me, he said, I've got a challenge for you. He said, because I've noticed that you're quite good at writing. He said, so why don't you write a play? And I was like, I don't know about that. Anyway, kind of like, give me this challenge. Give me this challenge to write a play. And I went home and I wrote it that night, like full play, 20 minutes. And then he was like, oh, that's really good, you know. He said, so now my challenge is that you work with the lads inside the rehab and you turn it into an actual event. So it became a play, 20-minute drama about drugs and life and, you know, the life that you experience when you're involved in that type of lifestyle. And then it was kind of like a Q&A session after. And I'll always remember the first one. We did it at St. Bede's, and I used to go to school at St. Bede's. So it was very intimidating to go back to school because I had done well at school. I left with 1 GCSE, English Lit. You do know what I mean? And yeah, I just found it really weird going back. And the first guy that I've bumped into was a guy called John Challoner, who was then the head teacher. And he was a Geordie bloke, and he was just like, really good to see you. He said, I'm really interested in this, what you're doing. He said, I've heard you've wrote it yourself and you're working with these lads to benefit each other. And he said, I'm looking forward to the Q&A session. And the way I looked at the Q&A session was that I used to say to the lads, you know, if you've got any secrets, you need to tell them, because people need to hear how grim it is and how devastating it can be. So something that I got into as, you know, like a soul anesthetizer, really, ultimately like destroyed me and took my soul away. And then getting clean and this process of the Q&As, you know, and I used to say to, you know, the pupils, the kids, I'd just say, just fire, you know, just ask us out and we'll answer, you know, let's go for it and let's just use it as a cleansing experience. And it did really well, you know. It went on it got carried on. I got a role then at Thomas as a support worker, first official job really that I'd ever had. I'd worked all over the place, but I generally lasted like 3 or 4 weeks before I got sacked for generally being smacked up in toilets or being late for work. And yeah, it's just that process. So then I went from being a support worker and then that being passed on and other lads taking it on and kind of like evolving it and using their own personal experiences. And then I started doing other work within the rehab. And then a Manchester theatre company turned up one day out at Blue just saying, does Simon Donnelly work here? Which were like really mad. And I was like, yeah, I'm that guy. And they were like, right, we want to interview you, give you an interview. We want you to become our project manager. And I was like, right. And they asked me to run the play and then questions, you know, Q&A. And
just to quickly put this into context with some sort of a timeline as well, how far back are we going here? What year are we talking?
So 2000.
Uh-huh.
So that was 2000, and I think that I worked at Thomas for 18 months. And then this theatre company came in and I had one interview with them and they said, right, the job's yours. And I was like, right, okay. And I literally went from Thomas to this theatre company and doubled my wage overnight, which were like crazy for me.
Yeah, because the interesting thing here is the thing around services. I mean, over the last 20 years, recovery culture has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Mutual aid has changed dramatically as well. So what could you access at that given point?
So at that given point, there weren't much, to be fair. There were local NA meetings and AA meetings, and I lost the love for NA because it was quite clicky back then. There were a bit of a Adidas trainers crew going on, and I kind of I don't really like this. And somebody said something to me in a meeting, and I took it away, and I thought, right, I'm done with that, because I'd said that I felt like using, and somebody said, go and try it and tell us how good it is. And it angered me, like really angered me, and I thought, I don't need this. I'll just sort myself out. So I went through the NLP process at Thomas and just continued doing those kind of processes and reprogramming my brain and learning. You know, one thing that I've always done since getting clean is to continue education. So I've always kept in education. Every couple of years I'll do another course and just keep progressing. Yeah, so I went to work for the theatre company in middle of 2001. No, beginning of 2002, I think it were. And worked for them. I think I worked for them for 2 years. Travelled all over the country doing different projects. We used to run something called Lab Project, which was emotional intelligence through drama, through use of puppets. That was a 2-week course. We did something called, we called it In Focus, and then it became Rehearsal for Life. And we went around the country delivering that in schools. And that was a week's course. They were really good times, actually. And then kind of like funding dropped. So obviously when funding drops, you either get more funding or people have to leave. And at that time, I just got into a relationship with somebody, and they worked at Night Safe, and I had quite a lot of history with Night Safe. I'd spent quite a lot of time there in their projects, playing table tennis, and then like doing some art for them. And just off the off chance, walked in to Night Safe and just said, "You haven't got any jobs going, have you?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we have. We've got this job going up at Woodvale Project." So started at Woodvale Project, which were good times. Met my now partner there. So yeah, that's 18 years ago, something like that. So I worked there for 4 years, and then things had changed a lot within the management structure, and I just felt like it was time to move on. So then I worked at James Street Project, which is supported housing for homeless people in Darwen. Worked there for 9 years doing shifts, kind of like selling my soul for the dollar. And then that came to a head. There'd been some like cuts or changes, as he called them, but they were definitely cuts. And working shifts had just caught up with me. And I was riding home from work one day, blacked out, fell off my bike, like in road, and I just thought, I've got to change jobs now. So I then went to work for a different company, and I became the lead on a program around vulnerable young people, and did some more facilitation work there as well. I'd also facilitated on citizens' inquiries, national citizens' inquiries throughout the country. So I had quite a lot of facilitation experience, did some more facilitation at this company that I was working for. And then took a step and you know, things kind of like my mental health had took a real dive, you know, and it's I've mentioned this quite a few times. I was sniffing quite a lot of cocaine at that point. The effects of working with children really caught up with me, because when people are adults, they might be troubled and they might have some, you know, challenges that they need to get through, but ultimately they can take responsibility. The responsibility is within themselves to say, you know, I'm an adult, I can face this. Whereas the children, they were just heartbreaking. You know, there were some absolutely horrendous cases that had come my way through social services, and I don't think I were really prepared for that. So I used to go and work with these kids, and, you know, it's kind of like my job were to support them, but also to try and reprogram their thinking did quite a lot of stuff around emotions and how our brains work and how we respond or react to situations. And the kids got it, but then they'd go home and the parents or step parents would knock it out within 5 minutes. So every week it was like a battle. You were like a rat on a wheel. And every week I were hearing more and more horrors that you think, you read stuff like that in papers, but then the brutal reality is it's happening on a doorstep. And my way to deal with that was to start sniffing coke again. And I ended up in a dark place. I ended up in a really dark place. That were 2019. And I got to a point where I just wanted to take my life. So I decided on the course of action. I'm not going to discuss the method, but it would have gone down as an accident. And it would have been accidental death recorded. No shame, no guilt on my family. But I got to that point. So we're doing trial runs and pushing to see how much I could, do it before I took the final kind of step. And then this were on a Sunday, and I'll always remember it because I got back home and I was sat on and I was scrolling through YouTube, and I came across Tyson Fury's Road to Redemption, and it was 43 minutes, and I sat on Crapper and watched it all. So I was like, save myself some money on toilet paper. Do you know what I mean? It resonated. Something clicked in my head, and I went to my partner's house. And I got through the door, and I was kind of like, I don't want to live. I'm worthless. I'm this. I'm that. She didn't know that I'd been doing a lot of cocaine. Came clean with her, but slapping myself in the face and, trying to push my fingers down my eyelids so I didn't have to look at her, and she was like an absolute tower of strength to me for me that day.
Break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's have a quick 5-minute tea break. Quick tea break. Tea break.
Did all, man.
Okay, seconds out, round 2. So we was up to the interval you had where you experienced the thing with the Tyson Fury YouTube thing. So then what happened after that?
So I went to my partner's house and started being honest and basically just had a breakdown. Really, really emotional. And I think a lot of it were because I've been engaging in this behaviour and she weren't aware of it. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of like secret squirrel missions, all undercover and stuff, and trying to maintain a public persona of going to work and, soaking up all this negative energy through working with these damaged kids, these vulnerable kids. And then went to Mel's and broke down, and then started, picking back up really from there.
So can you talk us through what happened for yourself with picking yourself back up? So what happened in that process for you?
So the process was just kind of like making a pact with myself that I wouldn't engage in that type of behaviour. So then I started seeing a bit more of people. So I was kind of like, because I was doing a lot of using on my own, I've become very insular. And I was knocking around with a couple of people. They were engaging in the same behaviour. Excuse me. And then ultimately made the decision to kind of break free out of those friendships, and that were a painful experience in itself because I've been friends with them people for a long time, and I kind of really struggled and felt quite alone, even though I've got kids and I've got a partner and a stepdaughter. I kind of thought, right, well, where am I at now? But then started connecting with people again who I've been friends with in the past. They were a really positive influence. And I'd spoke to them and told them what had been happening. And then, it's just that kind of like reset in your mind again, where you just think, right, okay, that's not doing me any good. It's kind of like killing me softly. And I think that's the thing with cocaine, you know, it's so socially acceptable in these times that we live in, that people go, you know, like 30 years ago, yeah, when everybody was into brown and like heroin, and, you know, cocaine were a thing that you do very, very occasionally. And you'd be like very, very covert about it, you know. You can go in any pub now and you can tell that people have been sniffing, and people just do it openly inside venues. It's and nobody bats an eye anymore. It's because it's that socially accepted, but it's still the big taboo. So like back in day, like our generation, we were all doing, you know, heroin, and that were kind of not spoke about. It was between people who were using, but it was still very much under the radar. And, you know, cocaine was like that, but then now it's kind of like up in the stratosphere, and everybody knows people who use, or it's just blatant. You know, any venue that you go to when you're having a night out, you can tell people are sniffed up a mile off, you know. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. I don't think that the power of the come down on cocaine is a lot different to other drugs.
It eats your soul.
Yeah,
that's how I've always seen cocaine. The fallout from it, it just kind of, it takes away the essence of you. It just eats away at your soul, and that's how I always think about cocaine.
Yeah,
I think that's why I've always kind of, I mean, I've dabbled with it, but I've never really got into having a massive addiction with this stuff. Well, I couldn't afford it predominantly, but yeah, I think it just kind of eats your soul.
So when you hit that place, we're watching the Tyson Fury YouTube video as well. So then what happened? I mean, was talk ourselves well an idea in your mind at that point? Did you?
No, it wasn't. So I'd around that time I started going, like I made this pact with myself that I'd get out every morning for a walk before work. It was kind of like autumn, so seasons were changing. And I would go into work and it would be dark, and I would coming home and it would be dark. And I'm not a winter person, I'm a sunshine person. I like bright light and sunshine, and a bit of heat. And the darkness, especially coming through that experience at that time, I needed to do something to kickstart my day properly, really. So I just found Hoddlesden Reservoir, which I call the Zen Palace. It's only like 1k walk around it. But in that time, I could either, you know, power walk it round or ran it a few times, or just walk in my own pace and take pictures. And then I thought, right, well, why don't you do a video? It's quiet there every morning. You know, why don't you start doing videos and just talk about your own experiences, and the hope that other people might watch him and kind of like identify with him. And I've been doing that since about October. And so then we got to 2020. My friend had died in 2019. He'd taken his life, went to the funeral, loads of lads there, you know, all lads from Darwen, all seshers, really, if we're being honest. And it was kind of soul destroying, because, you know, the British stiff upper lip were, I'm not going to show any emotion in front of people. So everybody stood around taking piss. And there's one lad there who were expressing his emotions. And I felt jealous of that, because I thought, I wish I could express my emotions in public without putting a facade on. And I remember sitting in my car and just breaking down and just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And it was like, your car's like your own private space, so it's kind of like you're enclosed, you're safe. And it just all came out. And his death really had a profound effect on me, really. You know, I hadn't seen him for quite a number of years, but, you know, back in there we were like really close, and I've had some of the funniest times in my life with that guy, you know. And then we got to beginning of February 2020, like very, very early. I think first week, and then I saw Johnny Stones as the car park, and I had a right laugh with him. Right good to kind of connect and catch up, because at one point he was going to move into my house because I was kind of struggling with my mortgage and stuff, and you know, we banded this idea of him moving in. It didn't happen, but just connected with him, and we're able to have a right good laugh with him, and you know, a bit life and soul at party, but then it's always the life and souls of the party who end up taking their lives. You know, I myself were like that. Raz, Johnny, Broggy, you know, they all life and soul at party, but sometimes it's like that class clown, you know, buzzing off everybody and getting everybody involved, masks your own darkness. And then I heard about Johnny's death, and I got to a point and I thought, right, I'm done with this, I've had enough of this. So I wrote a personal Facebook status about toxic masculinity, about how ego is a silent killer. You know, it sends people to the graves because they just can't put their hand up and say, I need support, or I'm really struggling, I need help, or just have honest conversations, kind of like with their mates. You know, we live in a working class town, it's an industrial town, so there's still that much bravado knocking about where, you know, if you want at Main Boys or if you want at Cox at town, it kind of gives you a status. But then with that status comes like a role to play up to.
Self-perpetuating, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've been given this role and then you feel you got to keep living up to that role all the time. So it just becomes a self-perpetuating thing.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because like I kind of like, you know, I could sesh. I was like major heavyweight in sesh game really. And that's how people saw me. They were like, oh, Slim's always up for a sesh.
Yeah. So whilst you went live as well, and I take it you went live daily, didn't you?
Yeah.
How long did that go on for?
So that went on for about...
So I remember seeing quite a lot of your snippets.
Yeah, so there were probably about 3 months where I was tanning it every single day, and getting like content, as it's called now, getting it out there, and people were like messaging me going, wow, you're brave for saying that, or for discussing that, or being so open. And then Johnny died, and I wrote this status about toxic masculinity, ego the silent killer, how we still like beat our chests rather than just say, I'm struggling, mate, you know, can we have a little chat, or you know, I need to get this off my chest, you know. And there's kind of like an assumption that, oh, I can't cope with that. I'm not the person to talk to. When anybody is the person to talk to, simply because it's not about engaging in a conversation. It's just about being an active listener, you know, and just by talking about it and expelling it out of your own mind, because that's essentially what it is. You know, we live with all this kind of like trauma or baggage that we carry around, and people go, oh, I can't talk about that because I'm a bit, you know, people see me like I'm a bit of a pussy, and it's like, nah, it's the exact opposite. It's strength, you know. And then that state has got over 500 shares in a day, and I just thought, right, I've got to use this momentum now. I've got to use that momentum and do something for the positive, and talk ourselves well. The name came about because when I got kicked out of Pierpoint back in there, Steve, the counsellor, took me to the front door, and he just said to me, he said, I'm just going to say this, mate. Talk yourself well and find a balance. See ya. And that stuck in my mind. It's stuck in my mind for a long time, because I was like, right, talk yourself well and find a balance. And at first I was like, what is he on about? Who's this guy telling me that crap when I'm just getting booted out of rehab? And it took me a long time to process it, you know, and sometimes I can still be like pretty secretive with it, you know, if I have issues of darkness or whatever. And it's that thing where it's better out than in. Do you know what I mean? It's better to kind of release the beast rather than the beast being inside your mind. Do you know what I mean? Because when it's inside your mind and it's that overthinking gig, it just gets out of control. It gets like really out of control. And
so do you want to talk us through, I mean, you got the idea, yeah?
yeah.
We're sat here in Sunbird Records now, a chunk of time later. Can you talk us through what's happened in between? Because a lot's happened.
Yeah. So we started it off and we'd organised some walks, some sunniest woods walks, you know, and they were aimed more at family than anything else. And excuse me. So they were aimed more at family. So that happened for a while. Then lockdown happened, so I flew out to Malta for a week's break on my Todd. And the day that I got there, the day after I got there, Malta got locked down. So anybody who'd arrived the day after I turned up were quarantined for 2 weeks in their hotel room. But because I got there the day before, I were allowed out, which was really mad because people were getting these meals and stuff in the room and all face masks and all that type of stuff. And I think that in Europe, people were taking it a lot more seriously than we did to start with, you know, like walking through thermal imaging cameras at airports and stuff like that. And if you had an high temperature, people were getting pulled out at queue and tested and stuff like that. So I had this mega week's break on my Todd where I literally just discovered Malta. And then came back and I rang work and I'm like, listen, I've just been on a plane with 200 people. I'm going to work from home this week. And half of managers were going, no, you need to be in. And I'm like, well, I'm not coming in. I'm going to stay at home because, you know, if it's as bad as everybody's cracking on, I need to stay away. I've been in an enclosed space with 200 people. So then decided the week after, because I'd had, you know, just kind of like working from home for a week, that I was going to go into work. And I got into work and they just went, mate, country's just gone into lockdown. So there's a computer, there's a chair, see you later. And then, ended up working from home, but also worked as much as I could in the community, delivering food and medication and stuff like that.
So you started off doing community walks, local parks with the community. I mean, you want to talk us through how you access the community? How did that happen?
So that kind of came through Facebook, really.
Social media,
yeah. So I set an account up called Talk Ourselves Well, and I think in the first week there were 400 people following it. It kind of just blew up very, very quickly. And then I did a podcast with the Lancashire Hot Pot lads. So that's Mike and Gav. And that were interesting. Simply because I'd previously done a podcast called The Lived Experience with those guys about drug use and, you know, my life living on streets and being involved in crime and stuff like that. And then because it blew up that quick, they had me on straight away. So then that gained some more traction. Then I opened, you know, an Instagram account and a Twitter account. Even though I didn't use Twitter that much, I thought, right, well, I just need to grab all these names. Do you know what I mean? So I've got the monopoly on it, really. And then, because I was being brutally honest on my videos, people was just, you know, like jumping on it all over it. And even like mates who live, you know, I've got a friend who lives in Belgium, who I haven't spoke to for the best part of 20 years. You know, we kind of like reconnected then through Talk Ourselves Well, you know, and we've both got a friend who lives up Orndale, Morecambe way, you know, and I reconnected with him. And then, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, what you do is really good, mate, you know, keep going for it. And to me, somebody said to me the other week, you know, oh, you're amazing and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't even see that, mate. Because I'm just a man on a mission where I possibly don't realise the impact that talking about my own experiences has on other people. And from being like very egotistical and arrogant and pretty grandiose in the past, try and show humility, spread love, and try and keep it as humble as possible these days. You know, because I think that
I think it's the realness. That's what people have connected with. You know, everything that you were putting out there was from the heart, and it was real, and that's what resonates with people. You know, it's coming from a very real place, and I think that was the key to it, really.
Yeah.
People are just seeing brutal honesty in a society that it's a fabricated society. You know, more often than not.
Yeah.
Everyone's leading fabricated lives on social media. So for something to come along that was just hard hitting, real, honest, I think that's what struck a chord with people, especially at the time. You know, we were living through the pandemic and all that. So yeah, you know, people taking it seriously at the start, but then there was so much misinformation. Do you know what I mean? We've been living in a time where we've been bombarded with all this misinformation all the time. So I think it's that realness that just cut through and has resonated with people.
So,
I know it certainly resonated with me.
So what's happened post-COVID? I mean, we could spend hours having interesting conversations around what happened with COVID. So as far as your mission, your passion, what has happened after COVID? The things open back up.
Yeah, so when basically as soon as the kind of like world reopened, we'd had this plan that we were going to create a session. So I have a friend who works for the Wildlife Trust, and he'd been instrumental in creating a space up at Whitehall Park where we'll hold the man support collective sessions. Flipping it, tongue-tied. And he'd said that he'd been taken off that project because he was doing a different project, and he just rang me and he said, listen, he said, get in touch with Chair at Park. He said, that'll be perfect, that space for you. He said, you know, there's a canopy, he said, and you can just run sessions there. So I thought, right, okay.
So just really quickly, when you're talking about running sessions, what does an average sort of session at that point of play? What did it involve? What happened? So
at that point of play, it involved the first time that we ran a session, it was me and one of my friends like quite a bit older than me. And you know, me and him have been, talking about how to talk ourselves well can progress and stuff. And we borrowed the canopy from the park and put the canopy up. And we took a little gas stove, like literally a little camp stove, so that we could provide people with a brew and an opportunity just to kind of like get stuff off the chest, and, you know, just in a non-judgmental place, you know.
And that was done via social media, so you just put this.
Yeah, just put it on social media, yeah. So it was called the Whitehall Man Club. And then I did some kind of marketing, like a marketing course. It was a day with this guy, and he said to me, he said, I'll just be honest with you. He said, when I see WMC, because I have the thing I play on Working Man's Club, and he said White Man's Club. And I thought, right, it's going to have to be called something different now, because if that's the association, I don't want that. I want it open to different cultures, religions, you know. But we have kind of like, so we don't discuss politics, we don't discuss religion, we don't discuss mental health medication, and we don't discuss method of suicide. For the simple reason we don't want people swapping tablets or discussing tablets, because we're not doctors, we're not medical professionals, we're not in a position where we could offer people a diagnosis. So if you say, oh, well, these work for me, yeah, but they might really react against somebody else.
It's very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Very dangerous. And obviously, method of suicide, we don't want to give anybody any ideas.
So what was the emphasis on within them sessions? Because if that's not all the stuff that you wouldn't discuss as well, what was it like in an average session? So what was you discussing?
So we were kind of like just having a chat about things, and then opening it up. So kind of like, we've got a format now, but back then we didn't. It was just pretty much freestyle. So like, if you're struggling or you want to come along and talk about something, you know, and you need to get something off your chest, come up and we'll just discuss it. And then obviously through my work in the community, I know like a lot of pathways for referrals and how to access those services, support services.
So was you doing that at that point?
At that point, no.
Okay.
So at that point, it started very, very slowly. So it started doing me and my friend, then me, my mate, and my son. And then bit by bit, people would be like, well, what's going on up there? Do you know what I mean? Because it's right at top at Park. It were August 4th when we started it. So like we're going, do you know what I mean? Probably worst time of year to start something like that. Chucking it down, but then we bought loads of camping lights on strings and just hooked them up all around the canopy so it's all lit up. Then we got a fire pit in sale, end of summer. Somebody brought some logs up, and then we've got this campfire. And the idea of a campfire is that people have been gathering around fire since beginning of time, since dawn of time, and having conversations, debates, arguments, settling differences. And we just thought the campfire provides like a focal point in the session. It's like...
Yeah, I think you've not got people staring at you intently. So, I mean, we're kind of still in a circle. We are outside and we are still kind of in a circle. And I think when you sit in a circle, you're always staring at somebody, aren't you? Whereas the fire kind of negates that, because you can just stare into the fire if you want to and just listen to the conversations going on around you. Or, if you choose to, you can start actively engaging in a conversation. Yeah. You've kind of got an option there, and that the fire provides you with that option. I think people would feel a lot more uncomfortable in that setting if we didn't have the fire. I think it'd put too much on them when they first come.
So what was it like with community support and resource as well?
So early days, they kind of like weren't that much support from community. People didn't know about it, because it were a Facebook thing and an Insta thing. But then we've kind of like had health professionals ringing up or saying to some of the members who, access health centres or whatever, can you drop some flyers off for us so we can put them out and about so people can hear about it?
How did they know about your cause?
So I think initially they'd heard about it through one of the guys who attended, and he'd spoke to them, and then they were saying, well, can you provide us with some flyers? We'll put them up in health centres. So there's some in health centre, leisure centre, different places. And then I think because of the impact, so every time we have a session, I write kind of like a status, like a synopsis of what's happened.
Yeah.
And it's very real, very down to earth. It's not in medical, like professional terms. It's just, because like how we're talking now is how I am, full stop. Queen could come and I'd be like, all right. And then a guy who's almost on straight and I'd be like, all right, mate. I don't chop and change between personalities to fit that purpose. What you see is what you get. So, I've known you for 30 odd years now, and I think that we've both stayed true to ourselves where, this is me. I'm comfortable in my own skin, and what you see is what you get, pal. And I'm fine with that.
I think the thing with it was, we weren't like forcing it out there. It truly has just kind of blossomed and grown organically. It was slow going in the early days. So I started going, it would have been around about a year ago. So around about the end of August, where it was still just a fire pit at the top, just a few guys sitting around. And then just as time's gone on, we just started refining little bits here and there. And then we lost somebody at Christmas, and then we started getting a bit more structure then, didn't we, into how the sessions were run then as well. So it used to just kind of be, like you said, a bit of a free-for-all. We used to just show up, have a chat. We planning to do work, but obviously it was winter, so we had no light or anything
Freezing.
like that. But, we were like slowly starting to like make plans and things as well, weren't it? But it's just been organic growth.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, Craig, because it was you who identified that we needed some kind of structure. And I've been to to other meetings. So like I've been to Andy's Man Club and different meetings, and I didn't like the idea of sitting in around, and I didn't like the idea of questions And I think that it's more free form, really. So first half an hour of our session now, you know, like me and Craig had a discussion and we broke it down and we said, like, first half an hour is getting to know you, new people, you know, catching up. Then second, so from 6:30 till 7:30, there's an option to either stay around fire. We've extended the space that we were using, so we trimmed it all back, put loads of wood chippings down. There's a picnic table there. So people have different spaces where they can chat to people, or you can do some grafting parks, so kind of like giving back to the community. Then we have a minute silence for remembrance and reflection at 7:30. And then it's either an opportunity for people to speak out in front of the group, or if people don't have anything to say, we'll just say, right, so we'll pick a topic and just have a discussion for half an hour. Everybody packs down, and then it's kind of like good to go then. Do you know what I mean?
So do you want to talk a little bit around how Craig got involved? I mean, and what your roles are?
I mean, I was aware of the group through social media, and I DJ and I promote, but I've struggled with social anxiety, and it had gotten quite bad over the years. And then we was both DJing at an event together. We'll give a shout out to Loose Blends while we're here. So we was DJing at Loose Blends together, and I was stood next to Si, his partner, for about an hour and a half, and I didn't utter a single word to the guy. I was just this boxed off, closed off kind of dude, do not approach. And then he pulled some hip hop vinyl out of his thing, and it struck up a conversation. And then I was like, you know, we started chatting a bit. I said, right, I'm going to come along to the group. I've been thinking about it anyway, because I wanted to take steps to try and get on top of my social anxiety. So I went up to the group that night. Again, I think I went up to the group for the first hour. I didn't say a word. I just sat there. I was just listening to the guys talking. Music came up. That was like, I think people had kind of cottoned on that was the way to get me going, really, was start talking about music. And then it was quite funny because we just met, and I was going to a hip hop show on the Friday, the week after we'd met. And you was like, oh, I'm up for that. Can I come along? And we went, no, we said, yeah, come along to this hip hop gig. So we were driving over to Burnley, like virtual silence on the car on the way there, like just pleasantries. We just met, and I'm not a talker. I'm not a talker at all. But then by the time we got to the end of this hip hop show, I realised that we knew some similar, but conversation was fully flowing then. So I don't think I went for a couple of weeks, but then I started going regular then. I was going up every week. Just started helping out more and more. I mean, this guy's personality is just infectious. It's hard not to get hyped up when you're around him. And I think I just I started drinking that up. And it's weird, really, because I think I mentioned this on the walk on Saturday, how like my journey and MSC's journey has kind of gone like in tandem. It's been quite surreal, really. So as my life's improved, there's like MSC has grown alongside that. And like I said, it's just grown organically. So I started getting involved, and then we started realizing that Si was just doing too much. So we started putting it out there, right? Can we start, building the collective? So like you said, we were called the White Old Man's Club. So we knew we needed to change the name. We ended up coming up with a Man Support Collective between us all. So then it was like, right, well, we need to start putting this collective into action now and start relieving some of the burden. So some of us were going up and setting up, so like Si'd show up and we'd already be set up there. So they weren't, because obviously Si was at work all day and then was pretty much rushing straight up there to try and get set up. And so it was like 6 o'clock, we were set up. Si could show up at any time. It didn't matter. We were set up, we were good to go. And then little bits just kept getting added. And then around Christmas was where we kind of started, the structure started coming into play then, didn't it? So we started getting that structure into play. And then, it's just weird. Word just seemed to start getting out, and more people started showing up to the sessions, and the light was coming, so we was out doing work in the park. So I think we'd gone from people thinking it's a bunch of weird men just sitting in Whitehall Park just having a gas. Do you know what I mean? It was like, actually, these guys they're doing something up there. They're a part of something up there, and we've always, we've been asked many times. One of the guys always says this. We've been asked many times, "Oh, are you guys doing community service when we're doing work in the park?" And it's like, no, but we're providing a service for the community, and that's what we've always tried to be, isn't it? A part of the wider community.
So that thing you're talking about with the impact with the community of that service and what you're providing as well. What's it feel like to be amongst that impact? What's that impact feel like for you?
For me, it's really powerful because just little bits of things, like clearing all old gutters out that have become like overgrown, and then there's an ornamental, I don't even know what
it's like a
used to be an old water fountain,
a flower bed, it's something like that,
and I think that were put in 1896, and it just got covered in soil and it was messy, and some guys have took it upon themselves to kind of like start cleaning it up and rechanneling the water, because there's a lot of silt gathered down there. So it's not just about a space to come up and have a chat, like we understand that blokes struggle to talk. Sometimes when you're working in pairs, you have a deeper conversation than you would in a group. And so like how I see kind of like my role is to go around and spend a bit of time with everybody. If people need a bit of one-to-one work because of my community work, I quite often do a bit of one-to-one. But then also, being fully involved in the group. And, recently we've had some new guys come, and the bravery and courage that we've seen off them, just being like straight out with it, and it was like, whoa, wicked. This is what it's about, because a lot of blokes, especially at young guns, sometimes it's kind of like they're still finding their way in the world, so they have that bravado. It's that armour, isn't it, that they chink themselves up with. But obviously, when you've got a lot of life experience, you can see it for what it is, and it's like, listen, mate, let it out. Do you know what I mean? Let's just get it out. Some of them do, some of them aren't ready yet, and that's cool, because there's never any pressure. There's no like, you don't turn around and put beans on somebody and it's like, well, it's your turn now. There's no pressure. It's you can come and listen. You can come and one guy, he calls it the fire session, and he just, he used to say to me, he'd be like, that fire's awesome. He said, because it's quite hypnotic in it when you look into fire, and you can just let your mind drift.
Yeah.
And I think that all these are kind of very integral parts of what makes it a successful session. And some people come one time and they get what they need. We've had a few guys who've come up who've been suicidal, so I've done some intervention work with them because I've done some suicide assist training, so I'm in a position where I can speak to them. And you never see them again, because at that time, that intervention was just right at that time, and they don't feel they need to come back, and that's cool. There's never any pressure to return or to be part of a clique or out like that. It's just freestyle, a lot of it, although we have like the format. Yeah, it seems to work.
I mean, one of the guys mentioned, didn't it, the other week, we was having discussions up at group, and how obviously with certain groups, there's always like, maybe this is run by the church or something, so there's always a bit more of it's coming from a certain standpoint or a stance, whereas we just aren't. We just try to create a non-judgmental space, and just, we all show respect when we're here, and I think people find that liberating, and that's why we get guys. I mean, we've had guys coming from all over the northwest, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've had guys coming from Burnley and I mean, the list is endless. it's touched. I think that's when I realised the impact of it. I know I've got my own, how it's impacted me personally, but then when you start looking at the wider picture and just the scope of what's been achieved in the time that we've been doing it, and from it when it first started getting that growth, it just kind of started snowballing from there. Then, didn't it?
Rapid,
it was really, really quick.
So where are you up to with getting support from local services and how you can support people into local services?
Okay,
So what are you up to there?
So we're up to, at the moment, we still, we have, donations. We've not accessed any funding as yet. So I created Talk Ourselves Well Limited, not knowing anything about business. And I just thought, I'll do this. And then to access funding, I'd set the company up wrong. So what I think will happen is that we'll be working towards like a community interest company, like a KIC as they call them, a Talk Ourselves Well CIC, where we can access funding and where we can kind of provide more services and then have kind of like pathways into different support services. I mean, like through my roles that I've worked in, I know the referral pathways myself. So if somebody needs that, I can put that forward to them. But the thing about Talk Ourselves Well is that it's called Talk Ourselves Well because everybody, unless you can't communicate through a learning difficulty or a difference, everybody has the power to open their mouth and talk about it. And people go, oh, well, it's hard. Well, it weren't easy for me the first time I did it. Do you know what I mean? But it's that continued practice that makes it easier. And the way that I see it going is, that we've survived for a year on purely on donations. We've accessed, we've had 1,050 people engage with us over the first year, which for a project, a man-based project, is like mega numbers. And then it's a case of, once it's a community interest company, then you can apply for funding. We'd have like more directors and probably like a board. That would consist of people who can bring something to the table or who have connections and pathways into funding and stuff like that. And then the scope for it is kind of like unbound, really. There's so many different things.
I mean, we've been coming up with so many. I mean, we have to stop ourselves sometimes because it's just like, right, let's just rein this in a little bit, because we'll sit there and we'll be shooting out loads of ideas. So I think the potential of where we can go with this is it's you know what I mean? It's pretty limitless, really. And as long as we're keeping spreading that message. I mean, I'm a guy that went from, I wouldn't talk to people, me and one of the other guys tend to take the lead on the Saturday walks where I'm having to engage with people. Do you know what I mean? And I don't feel like I've not got this anxiety about it as much anymore. I'm engaging with people, total strangers who I've never spoken to before. I would never, ever have done that. Absolutely never. I've said to Si before, I said, it's a good job I've been doing these sessions, because when we're on these nights out and people are talking about Talk Ourselves Well, we get a lot of hugs and things like that of people coming up to us, and in the past I'd have been like, just away. Do you know what I mean? But it's helped me out massively. I've been doing videos and all sorts, and it just works. It just works, man.
So that's going back to the thing about impact. And
Yeah.
So I think everyone's got their own personal journey, and then I think for us it's about just trying to recognise how much of an impact you're having on a wider scale, because you don't really see it when you're in the middle of it. I think it's only when other people kind of point it out to you that you find it kind of hits home a little bit.
So I'm just mindful here that Ramsey's give us a nod here. We've been sat here for quite a while.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the events?
Yeah. So we've got, you've got an event coming up this weekend. So that's the 27th.
Yeah, so Saturday the 27th of August. at the Vault, we have got the Talk Ourselves Well fundraiser. Well, it's a fundraiser, a bit of a prelude to the big event. So on Saturday, the 27th this week at the Vault, there's going to be live bands on. We've got stacks of DJs on. There's going to be some spoken word stuff. So that's going to be big. You know, some of the Talk Ourselves Well DJs are going to be there. Some of the Talk Ourselves Wells guys are going to be at Wristbands again on the Sunday night, and then the big one on Saturday, the 3rd of September, Unmute. The big Talk Ourselves Well fundraiser. We're over 2 venues, so we're at Sunbird Records from 3 o'clock, and we're going to be at number 39 from 5 o'clock. So we're going to be over those 2 venues again. We've got live acts, we've got DJs, we've got stalls, we've got talks. It's quite a stacked lineup, isn't it, really, dude?
Yeah, it's going to be massive. Do you know what I mean? And it covers so many different genres of music that I think Darwen needs something that's kind of like multi-genre rather than just one genre, because it's kind of like it's attracting people. People have different musical tastes. You know, but then shout out to, you know, like yourself, Bob, and Si for you know, that gig, offering to, you know, give us proceedings of, you know, some of the door. It's
massive respect,
massively appreciated.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the thing was that we were going to put an event on anyway.
Yeah.
It was in the pipeline. Build it, people will come anyway.
Yeah.
The interesting thing was that a lot of the charity work that I've personally been involved in is that I'm interested in the commodity of people. I'm also interested in the commodity of no money. I'm interested in the commodity of people being interested in music and community. And that's pretty much what's happened. And the interesting thing is every act that I've rung, within 15 seconds of having a conversation, I've had lots of conversations, just been like, we're going to come and do it. Love to come and do it. Yeah. So it's that whole vibe of, it's not about money. Yeah. Even though we're raising money for your cause. So that's been a really nice thing to be around, and long may that continue, where
that's
people get together. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, and that's what we've always been looking at. This is why we named it as a collective, really, wasn't it? The Man Support Collective. It was about we come together as a community. Yeah. You know, we give. We take, this is that reciprocation there. Do you know what I mean? You come and you get what you need from us, and then you give back to the community when you're able to. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we've always been about, that first and foremost. Yeah. We're a part of the wider community. We're not boxing ourselves off anywhere. We're not trying to hide anywhere. We're here. We're loud and proud.
Yeah. And it's that thing, innit, that vibe attracts tribe.
Yeah.
You know, it's if you come with a positive attitude and you're buzzing and, you know, like your energy's infectious, that draws other positive influences towards you, and then you kind of start bouncing off that, and then anything can happen, can't it? You know, you have a few creatives. I'm rubbish at writing anything down, so everything that I've done with Talk Ourselves Well up to yet is just out of my brain. I haven't wrote a thing down, you know, and like we've got some sheets in front of us that's just got loads of different events or, you know, achievements that people have made on with Talk Ourselves Well and on behalf of Talk Ourselves Well. And it's just that thing that if you give the vibe out, you get it back. Do you know what I mean? And it's not hard to create a vibe. You know, you just turn up, be buzzing, have a laugh, you know, engage people, show people love. You know, we live in a society where people will say, "Oh, I love you," you know, but like I've been to like raids in Manchester, you know, drum and bass gigs and stuff like that, and they're always saying, you know, let's spread some love, and that's what it's about. And it's, if you share it, you generate it, you get it back. And for me, that's essentially what it's about.
And what a town to do it in as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Very quick plug to Dave Wilson as well for the phone call over to the Vault as well. So yeah, thank you.
And also Secret Mixes. Go and check out the Kev McCormick Secret Mix, the KMC Secret Mix, sorry. And you get a taste of some of the vibes you're going to hear over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, and I'd want to shout out Ramsey from Sunbird for hosting us.
Yeah, much love, dude.
Doing the film work, doing the sound, doing the lights. Ramsey's got the odd job. We just sit here and talk.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
cheers,
mean?
dude,
So,
man.
yeah.
Absolute legend.
Quick plug as well to Chris Ecclesall from Demented Disco. He does a lot behind the scenes for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, big shout out, Chris.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Much
you.
love.
And on that note, we out of here.
Peace.